That's what the Navy Secretary just accused him of being, as a traitor. And so, boy, have we got our priorities out of order. And that was quite the rhetoric from the Navy Secretary that you don't hear very often. Because the funding for the military comes through the Senate and the House, and he just called one of the senators that they need to vote for the legislation to fund the Pentagon basically a traitor on a CNN. So I'm not sure that's going to make the situation better, but I'm glad Senator Tuberville is sticking to his guns, so to speak, pun fully intended. Moving on to a few of the other stories I want to get to. The funding, as I mentioned recently, the funding for the government is the budget for the government is due at the end of September, and Senator Cruz went on Fox and said, yeah, basically we're going to have a government shutdown. We're basically going to have a government shutdown because Republicans and Democrats can't agree on the funding. So what I said and what I'll stand by is that I'm not, nor should you, get optimistic about the Republicans fighting, keeping their word, not funding Biden's regime. We don't, as the voters, as the electorate, we don't need to get excited about that, get optimistic about it. Yeah, the Republicans are finally going to get serious about this spending problem. I just wouldn't get excited about that, and here's why. The Republicans are notorious for not being able to negotiate very well. They are terrible at it. They're terrible at negotiating. They're terrible at sticking to their promises. And so we shouldn't mislead the audience. We shouldn't mislead our audience to think that there's something good that's going to come out of this. And maybe I'll be surprised. Maybe I'll be wrong. Wouldn't that be great? So I would say, let's wait and see. Let's wait and see. And by the way, the question is, are the Republicans, because you got to have Republican votes in both the House and the Senate to fund the government, are the Republicans going to vote to fund the Pentagon and their abortion agenda? Are the Republicans going to vote to fund Jack Smith and the special counsel that is trying to lock President Trump up? Are the Republicans going to fund those two critical measures? Let's wait and find out. We'll be back in a few.
What is the source of America's greatness? My name is Abraham Hamilton III, and this is the Hamilton Minute. Alexis de Tocqueville, a 19th century French political thinker and philosopher, had this exact same question. On the heels of the French Revolution, he came to America in 1831 to
今日エクササイズどうだった？エクササイズどうだった？
男の先生で。
ああ、ちゃんと最後までいたの？
男は少ないけどね。
ああ。前の方でやったんです今日は。
いつもの後ろで。
ああ。チケットもらったんでしょ？
赤いので。
よかったね。シャワーも入った。サウナも。よかったね。
This is Raising Healthy Girls Minute with Patty Garibay of American Heritage Girls. Have you noticed the difference in your girl knowing something versus understanding it? Reminds me of the adage, knowledge is discovering that ketchup is made from tomatoes. Understanding is knowing that ketchup is not a vegetable. Like a mental connect the dots, you are looking for your girl to move from knowledge to understanding in her journey through life. But how can you recognize this in real time? Look for your girl to make consistent changes daily fueled by what she's learned from you about God. This is the renewal of her mind, as in Romans 12:1-2, coming to the surface. As she grows, pray for the Holy Spirit to build her confidence and joy at His work in her heart. Be before to praise the Lord and trust His work as she grows.
We are all called to raise up the next generation of Christian leaders. Learn more about empowering girls at raisinggodlygirls.com. Hey friends, it's Jessica Beck, Dr. Nurse Mama, as your 1-minute parenting coach. Does your teen have a code word to stay safe? Teens often get themselves in situations over their heads. They don't go out with the intent on driving home with someone who's been drinking. They don't plan to go on a date where they feel pressured. But it's hard to explain that over the phone sometimes. As parents, when we hear this news, we feel angry, but truthfully, we are terrified of something threatening their safety. Using a code word makes you a safe rescue in emergencies. It can be a single word or even an emoji. And when sent, it means I'll pick you up anytime, anywhere, no questions asked until the next morning. Then your teen is safe and emotions have cooled for rational conversation. I'll see you on the Dr. Nurse Mama podcast here on American Family Radio.
At the Core podcast are available at AFR.net. Now, back to At the Core on American Family Radio.
Welcome back to At the Core here on American Family Radio. Walker Wildman here with you. We'll have Chris Woodward with us in the last segment of the program today, bringing us some news of the week. Hey, one thing of many things I wanted to mention is our AFA retreat that we do each year over in Sylacauga, Alabama. Yes, if you haven't heard of Sylacauga, that's all right. About an hour south, not quite an hour, about 45 minutes south of Birmingham, Alabama. But a beautiful farm, a family-owned retreat center there, Christian-owned, by the way. And that's where we're going to be hosting our annual AFA retreat. And it's brought to you by our foundation, our AFA Foundation, which handles and is experts in charitable gift annuities and will and estate planning. That's our AFA Foundation. But if you're interested in this retreat, we would love to have you come join us. It's going to be April 3 through 6 of 24. That's April 3 through 6 of 2024. AFAretreat.net's that URL. AFAretreat.net is that URL. And there's going to be several speakers there. I'll be one of them, but I'm not one to toot my own horn. So let's go look at some of the other folks that are going to be there. We're going to have Jenna Ellis with us. We're going to have Bishop E.W. Jackson will be there. Our good friend, Dr. Ray Pritchard. Rob West with Faith and Finance, host of Faith and Finance here on American Family Radio. And the rest of our leadership team will be there at Sylacauga, Alabama. And we look forward to seeing you there. AFAretreat.net, AFAretreat.net. That's April of 2024, but spaces are filling up. And we would love for you to go check that out and join us there. It's a beautiful place, one of the most beautiful retreat locations that I've ever been to. I would say the most beautiful that I've ever been to. Absolutely gorgeous in God's creation. Great time of fellowship and uplifting each other. That's AFAretreat.net. Well, moving back into some of the stories I want to make sure we get to. One area that I'm heavily focused on is the trajectory of America when it comes to our moral and family foundations. The family is critical to a thriving society, a thriving culture, a thriving nation. And you can look throughout human history, and where families are prioritized, where families are affirmed, where families are made a priority, the nations tend to do well. When you denigrate the family, the biblical family structure, nations begin to decline. That's what we're experiencing in America as we speak. Ashley St. Clair, she's with the Babylon Bee and other outlets, but she was on Fox with Jesse Waters, and she was actually talking about declining birth rates. And this is a pretty interesting exchange, something that I've talked about pretty often. But let's listen to this lady talking about the reason for declining birth rates in America.
Why the propaganda to scare young women away from getting married and having children? Because you see it everywhere with the climate agenda, and you see it almost in the corporate agenda to a certain extent.
Yes, it's a very anti-natalist agenda, anti-human agenda, in my opinion. We see it with everything. Be a boss babe, don't have kids. Don't have kids, they're bad for the environment. Nothing worse than carbon-emitting babies. That, to me, is a very evil thing to say. And they say this consistently, and we do have a declining birth rate. We saw it with Rome. They had a declining birth rate right before the fall of Rome. It's happening here in America. It's happening in Japan. And this happens all the time in prosperous nations. And we need to reject this culture, or it's going to be very bad.
Wow. She's right. It happened in Rome. It's happening in Japan. By the way, it's happened in China. Look at China. Their leaders are very concerned, and they're actually now changing the standards. They're paying people to get married in China, and they're changing the standards on their one-child policy in China. But she's exactly right. This is an evil agenda. This is an evil agenda. I mean, who are we as humans to tell other people that we can't have any more humans, that we don't need to have any more humans? But here we are. We won't sacrifice ourselves, but you ought not have kids. Marriage is bad. Having kids is bad. It's a drag. It's a drain. You shouldn't do it. It costs too much money. And excuses and excuses and excuses. But you know what this boils down to? This boils down to the adoption of a humanist, secular humanist, Marxist, self-centered ideology. That's what it boils down to. And we have such a prosperous nation from a monetary standpoint and from a quality of life standpoint. I've heard some people say, I've heard one gentleman say, I think it might have been David Barton, but I heard someone once say that you and I live like kings lived 1,000 years ago. Here in America, we have the opportunity for property ownership. We have the opportunity for an education. We have the opportunity for food, water, shelter, clothing. Those are basic necessities, basic aspects of life that most people don't really stress about in America. Some do, yeah, but not many. We've got technology, medical advancements, one of the most advanced medical nations in the world in human history. I mean, we've got it all from a human, materialistic standpoint, from a flourishing standpoint. We have materially everything we need for a successful nation, for a successful country, for a flourishing nation to maintain that. And we're all proud of that, and we're all trying to achieve these different things that are part of the world, but not necessarily inherently bad, right? It's not bad to want to earn a living. It's not bad to want to own property and to own a home and earn a good living and provide for your children and get them a good education and help them get on a path towards success. All of those things are good things when used in the appropriate context. But here we are in America, 2023, and we've totally neglected and belittled one of the most fundamental aspects of life, and that is multiplication. Do you think it's coincidental that God in Genesis, within 1 or 2 chapters, talks about being fruitful and multiplying? You think that's coincidental? No. The reason God mentioned that in Genesis is because it's fundamental to the sustainment of mankind. And then they pull this garbage, that's what I call it, garbage, because we shouldn't be ingesting it. We can talk about it, but let's not ingest it. They say, oh, we've got too many people on this earth. We're overpopulated. No, we're not. No, we're not. We're not overpopulated in America. We're not overpopulated in the world. We have abundant space We've got millions of acres of uncharted territory, or undeveloped territory. We are not rubbing shoulders in the forest because we don't have enough space. That is completely untrue. Do you think that our Creator God would have designed and created this perfect thing called Earth only to get full, to become full, and we don't have anywhere to go and we can't sustain life? How low thinking are we that He created this magnificent Earth to sustain life? Everything is here for life. Everything is here that we need to sustain life and produce life and continue the advancement of mankind and the stewardship of His earth. And you think that God didn't plan for the earth to have a lot of people on it? Oh, that's right, because we think we are God and we think we know better. But this talk and this way of thinking, and it is pervasive in American society, it's actually a problem in our churches, folks. So wake up, Christians. But this negativity, this negative viewpoint about having multiple children is toxic. It's toxic, and it is not of God. Because as I've told people, and folks, we've got to wake up to this. We got to fess up to it, all right? That this fact that we've allowed the world to seep into the way we think. But this notion that children are a burden, children are expensive, children are a lot of work, and all these other excuses, these are humanistic ideals. These are ideals built on the premise that it's all about I, and if anything is hard, is challenging, requires work, requires sweat, then we ought not do it. But one thing we won't talk about is if our parents adopted this humanistic ideal of less is more, then you and I probably wouldn't be here. But we can't talk about that because then that would be humbling. Well, we could possibly not be here. Because what if my parents decided that they ought not have children because they care more about themselves than they do future generations? And so one way that our nation is being destroyed is through this sole topic. And you wouldn't think that this one area of marriage and family could be so pivotal to the future of a nation, but boy, is it. And so not only are we talking a numbers game here about a declining birth rate, not at replacement levels. The only reason our population in America is growing is because we're importing 1 million, 2 million illegal immigrants through our southern border to suck our resources dry in our nation. You talk about infuriating. The government says you're having too many kids. The government says you're putting out too many carbon emissions. The government says you ought to pay your fair share. More taxes, more taxes, more taxes. Meanwhile, they've got the back door open. No, it's not even the back door. They got the front door open at the southern border, letting 1 to 2 million illegal criminal immigrants. And yes, they're all criminals, because when you trespass and you invade a sovereign nation, that in and of itself is not only a national crime, it's an international crime. And it's a crime against God's order. Remember in Scripture, it talks about God creating boundaries for inhabitants. So we're letting 2 million illegal immigrants come into our nation, criminals come into our nation, and suck our resources dry. By the way, the fact that the governor of Texas and the governor of Florida are busing these illegal immigrants to New York City and San Francisco, California, and New York State is an absolutely beautiful thing. Because the more I read up about what's going on in New York, they have a major problem on their hands. And I think it's beautiful. They have a major problem on their hands. They raised their hand for this. They virtue signaled. These left-wing Marxist cities said, yeah, we're a sanctuary state. We'll take illegal immigrants. Martha's Vineyard, we'll take illegal immigrants. And they take them and then they boot them. And so New York City, the mayor there, Eric Adams, he doesn't know what to do. He is way in over his head. And there's a state Supreme Court ruling that tells New York City, you have to harbor these illegal immigrants. You can't do anything with them.